Hi, everybody. Welcome back to New York Stock Exchange. My name is Dave Vellante, and this is our AI Factory series, NYSE Wired, plus theCUBE. Sid Nag is here. He's the principal analyst, founder of Tekonyx, former Gartner analyst. Sid, good to see you.
Good to see you, Dave.
Thanks for coming
having
in.
me, yeah.
Hey, you bet. I love to talk about AI factories. You've been prolific, writing a lot of stuff. I appreciate the text. Hey, I just dropped another piece. It's thoughtful. You spent a lot of time thinking about infrastructure, what's riding on top of the infrastructure. You know, it's funny, Sid. Our industry, it's like better than watching sports right now.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You watch the news channel, it's like one day this company's out of favor, the next day they're like, their stock's exploding. 5 days later, oh, they're in the tank because this has circular references. You know, you've seen these waves before. People get confused, right?
Certainly.
But we know when the new stuff is not really big enough, it's growing fast, but it's not big enough to offset the decline in the old stuff, people get really confused, you know, and things ebb and flow. So what do you think of this wave? Having fun?
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating, right? I mean, you talked about the TV analogy. I feel like you've got to have all these picture-in-picture screens of all the different things that are going on one single screen. You know?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's fast and furious, that's for sure. You know, AI has really taken off. I think it's definitely matured beyond the sort of the invention phase. People are actually starting to use it, so that's good. I mean, we keep hearing about the MIT study, but I think that's like the lack of tooling that's causing that, but the technology is solid. And I think you're going to see more and more of sort of AI taking off. The role of the hyperscalers, the role of the model builders, the role of the role of the telecom providers is extremely interesting with all the networking piece, the role of the switch vendors. Suddenly networking is sexy again, you know, it's kind of cool. Connecting GPU clusters and neo clouds. I mean, my mind is blowing.
Semiconductors is the hottest thing on the planet, right? Infrastructure's cool again. We're just coming off a reInvent. Amazon announced AI factories. I was like, oh, where'd you get that name? So that's cool. Of course, Dell was the first with AI factories. I think, you know, HP's got a version of that as well. But what is an AI factory to you?
You know, that's a good question. I've been thinking about this for a while now. As you pointed out, I posted a few LinkedIn posts on AI factory. To me, you know, the AI factory is not a physical thing, right? It's a logical thing, right? And it's a logical thing that enterprises can use to deploy AI effectively for delivering, and I talked to John about this the last time we spoke on the show, is delivering what I call scalable intelligence, right? So it's important that the data gets ingested into some sort of a pipeline. Then you got the inferencing, the models, the robotics, the tools, the software, all of that coming together, right? And to me, it's a logical thing, and it's not a hard logical thing. It's a thing that is spun up on demand, right? So I'm a enterprise in the financial industry. I want to build an AI factory to get predictive models for a certain stock, right? Tomorrow I want to do something in terms of bonds, right? I want to build an AI factory on demand that helps me deliver that intelligence to drive and make decisions, right? And unlike sort of the normal factory that people talk about, you got hardware like GPUs and tools and models and other things, it's really much more logical than physical, right? And it's important that these entities that drive building the AI factory are connected in some sort of a manner that is API driven, right? So it can't be sort of hard plumbing every time. So let's take, we're sitting here in New York City, right? So you think about all the different infrastructure pieces that drive the city. You've got the sanitation system, you've got the subway, you've got the fire department, you've got all the sewer system, you know, and the roadways, of course, the grid. But like what happens when something breaks, you know? Like there's a sinkhole on Broadway, I gotta dig the sinkhole, but I gotta make sure the sewer system doesn't get broken. I gotta make sure that the subway system doesn't get impacted, and I gotta shut down everything. So that's not a scalable model in the AI world, right? So we gotta make sure that we do it in a logical fashion, connect with things with each other, so I don't have to go digging things underneath the plumbing. I can connect at the API layer, I can stand it up on as demand, as needed, and get that scalable intelligence and the output. And that is gonna be driving the growth of AI, in my opinion.
So that's interesting. Scalable intelligence
Yeah.
is sort of the output. That's what you're creating out of the factory.
Yeah.
Versus what do data centers produce? Produce data, right? And I guess workflows, right? Automated workflows.
Yeah.
So what happens to sort of all that general purpose infrastructure out there? Will it transition in your mind to so-called accelerated computing? Or will they kind of coexist like the mainframe has coexisted for decades after, the PCs? How do you see that playing?
I think all of these things will be there. The physical things, right?
Yeah.
So if I want a unit of compute, it doesn't matter where I get it from, whether I get it from a GPU sitting in CoreWeave, or a Trainium sitting in Amazon, or a mainframe sitting in from IBM, whether Z or Power or whatever, right? I want a unit of compute. And these are distributed systems that people own, are going to buy, and they're all available. So when I build an AI factory and I'm ingesting a volume of data into it, I want to process that with some sort of compute power at scale to drive these large language models for my benefit. It doesn't matter to me how I get that one unit of compute, right? That's the way I see it.
What do you make? You wrote about this. I want to pull up one of your awesome posts. You had this chart here. Google TPU versus Nvidia GPU. You have TPU, Google purpose-built AI ASICs, matrix math, extreme scale, deep integration with JAX and XLA. GPU Nvidia flexible accelerator, universal for all AI attacks, massive CUDA tooling ecosystem. What was your point of that? How do you see this playing out? Of course, the stock market went crazy when TPUs, which have been around forever, people started to realize, oh, well, Google might sell to outside of Google. Whoa, NVIDIA's in big trouble. And so how do you see that playing out? Was the reaction in the market, was it an overreaction? Was it appropriate? How do you see it?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly, to be candid with you. I mean, to your point, the TPUs have been there forever. I mean, this whole transformer model was a paper that was written by Google brain guys, right? Back in the day, sat on the shelves, right?
Right.
And that became the underpinning of what we call Gen AI today, right? NLP, sequence transduction, all that crazy technology. So the TPU, in a way, is sort of, I guess, is more geared towards doing large matrix multiplication, and that's what I'm talking about in that.
So is that inference?
Post.
Is that inference?
It's both training and inference, right? Anything that requires that heavy-duty compute, depending on the size of the model, of course, right? That's really the key here. But I think as we were talking before the show, you're going to have some silicon vendors that are going to be the Switzerlands of the world, and some silicon vendors that are going to attach their future to the other way around. To the hyperscalers are going to build their own silicon that's going to be tied to that hyperscaler itself and will not be available commercially for anybody else to consume, right? Unless you strike some specialized deals. So in the case of Google is TPU, in the case of AWS is Trainium. Now Google, interestingly enough, Meta decided to use TPUs, and that sparked this whole storm in the discussion, right? Now we shall see how generically available TPU will be, how much will Google do that. If Google does that, that's going to be, that's the inflection point I'm looking at. That's what's going to cause a lot of heartache for the NVIDIAs of the world. But now I think, given NVIDIA's position, and especially with all the surround technologies on CUDA and other things, they're sitting in a very interesting position. And they're definitely the Switzerlands of the world today. Whether the TPU will become the Switzerland of the world, we shall see. Maybe Google will go in that direction. That remains to be seen.
The way I look at it,
what's your thought?
Get your thoughts on this. I think volume is a real driver in semiconductors because of experience curves. You hear Morris Wang talk about it, or Morris Chang rather, talk about it with TSM. Of course, that's in semiconductor manufacturing, but I think it also applies in the design. And I think volume, which we've seen with ARM, right? ARM wafer volumes are 10x those of x86, and they, kind of took over the world. And from an economic standpoint, that's where I see NVIDIA having the advantage. In addition to the things you're talking about, CUDA, the libraries, the ecosystem. So I don't see them, margins may come down some, but I don't see any of these other sort of, whether it's Trainium, whatever, Microsoft's doing. TPU I like, I think it's very impressive, but I don't see it getting the volume that Nvidia gets, and as a result, I think the lowest performance watt advantage accrues to Nvidia. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, today, yes. And the volume is because they're making themselves available to every possible vendor, as from an ecosystem perspective.
The Switzerland point that you made it.
Yeah. So if Google decides to do that, then they can certainly achieve that volume. They can give Nvidia a run for their money. But right now, the whole hype was about their partnership with Meta, and I think that sparked the whole conversation. Are we going to see more Metas start using TPUs? Then you'll see that volume discussion become more prominent, right?
I was talking to Dave Vellante a couple years ago, actually. Now, when this whole thing started, and we were talking about Nvidia, and he brought up, well, you know, is it like Cisco, your old company, which remember they were when you were there, actually the most valuable company in the world, or is it, you know, moderated, came back to the mean, or is it more like Google, right, where you know they kind of came out of the post.com era and dominated. And Crawford Del Prete from IDC said it's neither. It's Wintel, because they got the hardware and the software, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting. And some others have picked up on that, you know, subsequent to that. But what do you think about GPU cycles? There's, you know, Michael Burry came out and sort of shorted some of these AI stocks, saying that they're cooking the books, which I laugh at, because you're talking about a CPU depreciation cycle or a server depreciation cycle of whatever, moving from 3 years to 4 years to 5 years. Some even do 6 years now. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's billions of dollars, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. But my question to you is, will AI, because of the faster cycles, compress, you know, those depreciation cycles? Like, let's call it useful life. Forget about how the accounting is done. Will a training GPU today be useful 3, 4, 5 years down the road, maybe as an inference infrastructure? What do you think?
That's an interesting thing to ponder, I suppose. But I'm reminded of the days of, you know, the Intel Pentium chips. Remember those days?
Yeah, of course.
Well, people used to go buy a new laptop every year.
Right, 286, 386, 46. I want a 486, right?
People used to buy a new because they wanted the latest chip.
Yeah.
But what happens today? Nobody buys a laptop.
Same with
every
iPhone.
year. Yeah.
Same with iPhone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think in the world of GPUs, you're probably going to see that Pentium cycle sort of emerge and last for a while, and then you're going to see the sort of the flattening of the curve, right?
Yeah.
That's my short answer.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Let's talk about enterprises. So, you know, you mentioned the MIT study before, which basically, if you've been under a rock and haven't seen it, said 95% of the POCs don't return, you know, significant ROI when they go to production, something along those lines. Why not? Like, what's missing? First of all, every conference you go to, they trot out the anti-MIT study example, right? Their customers like, no, our customers are seeing ROI. Okay, so there's always a handful of examples, but what are the challenges that they face? Data obviously is one of them. Some of the narrow use cases, maybe they're not going after big ideas, big NPVs at this point in time. What are the challenges that organizations, the companies that you used to work with face?
From a vendor perspective, or
no, specifically the buyer.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we talked about this briefly earlier. It's back to the factory, right? If you don't know how to use AI, if you don't have the right set of tools and right logical paths and pipelines to get a actionable output or outcome, like a scalable intelligence. I know it sounds like repetitive, but that if I can hold on to something that I get out of the AI pipeline or the AI factory, which I can then go to my people and say, action these things for your business. So whether it's operations, whether it's sales, whether it's IT, whether it's supply chain, procurement, sales, productivity. So once you start seeing folks take that output from that AI factory, that logical thing I talked about earlier, and drive actionable results for each of the subdivisions within the enterprise, I think that's what's going to be the winner. And in order to get there, again, spinning up these logical AI factories without having to do a lot of hand stitching and connecting this technology to this hardware to this software, that's going to be not the answer. or to this model, like, if I'm using Vertex AI and Bedrock, and I got Nova underneath Bedrock, I got Gemini underneath Vertex AI, I'm a multi-cloud user. How do I federate across these layers, right? Who's going to do it for me? If I bring an AI workload and my vendor tells me, oh, I've got 15,000 flavors of silicon that can service the AI workload. Okay, that's great. My head's spinning.
Yeah.
Tell me which silicon applies to this workload. So kind of like the serverless idea, call it siliconless, right? I mean, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
That's what is going to drive the adoption of AI in a much faster way. So things like that, like factories, logical spin-ups of these things like siliconless, things like how do I federate across multiple cloud environments, right? Those are the things that it's not about the next frontier model that's going to drive the adoption of AI, right?
Oh, there'll be plenty of frontier models, right? They'll take care of that.
Yeah.
What about energy? You've written about it. Everybody talks about it as a big limiting factor. I feel like the public policy suggests that we have to have plentiful energy if we want to win this AI race. It seems to me it's a mandate. That we're going to figure it out. Is it? Do you buy that we will figure it out as an industry? Is it overstated as a blocker? How do you see that playing out, or is it understated as a blocker, where the U.S. is at a significant disadvantage, for instance, to China, which gets plenty of power?
Yeah. So I think the energy discussion is very different than everything else. I'll tell you why. Because energy companies today are monopolies, right?
Yeah. Right.
And the energy companies are regulated by the government, in the state government, federal government, what have you, right? I mean, if I'm a consumer of electricity in my town, I can only buy electricity from one company, right? And that company, if they do something wrong, I have no recourse unless I go to the Board of Public Utilities, and file a complaint against them.
Yeah, and then you get
then they show up really fast, right?
And then you have the one I call the plug compatible energy company that's actually running off the monopoly's grid.
Correct. Right. So I'm like, so my point is, I think that's where the role of the government is going to matter. I hate to see government. I'm a free economy, free market, laissez-faire kind of a guy.
Yeah,
but that's where I think the government has to take some steps to think about the promotion of AI in the U.S. and the role of the energy companies, how these people work together, right? Because the grids are burning out, we know that, right? So what is our growth policy as America or the United States to grow the energy grid, right? Whether it's going to be beyond the traditional sources of energy, whether it's going to be nuclear. I mean, Microsoft talked about investing in nuclear power stations for energy for the data centers. What's the role of solar? Then you got to worry about the new batteries that are coming out, the BESS batteries, right? BESS, it's an acronym, I forget what it stands for. Like driving this massive amounts of energy buffers in case the grid were to fail. So my point is, all of these things, then you got to think about the amount of heat this is going to generate. What happens with the sustainability model, right? How do we recycle these energy sources or waste, right? I mean, it's a mind-blowing conversation that no one's talking about. Right?
Nobody's talking about sustainability anymore. I mean, some people are who are in the business.
The whole ESG model, right? Environmental ESG model, environmental, social, and governance.
That was the hottest topic
5
years ago. No, nobody's talking about.
With the advent of energy proliferation that's going to be needed for these AI data centers, I think it's time for us to talk about it as a society, right? As humanity, right? So what's the role of the government? I don't know. I mean, I only see the role of the government because there are monopolies that are running the energy companies, right? So there has to be some governmental innovation or some policy statement or some guidance, because it's not really a free market. So I don't know. It's kind of complicated, I guess. So I'm trying to lay out a few things that we ought to think about as a
one of my colleagues,
pioneers, right?
One of my colleagues posits that, look, without energy, obviously you're going to fail, and you got the best people. You got guys like James Hamilton working on this problem, so they're gonna solve it and put, whether it's LNG turbines next to the data center or nuclear, it's got to be resolved. So he's not worried about it, but it's not his problem to solve, I guess. But I want to come back to something we were talking about. We were using JPMC, Jamie Dimon, as a metaphor for mainstream or enterprises with proprietary data. So we know that the hyperscalers are building out all this AI infrastructure. We know the neo clouds, they're taking the entire Nvidia kit So they're getting some good allocation from Jensen, check. What about mainstream enterprises? So all those, the first two building AI factories, will enterprises be building AI factories? Or will they be tapping into neo clouds and hyperscalers? Or, because I guess colos, like an Equinix or Digital Realty, I guess they could build an AI factory inside of their facilities. How do you see that playing out in the will they bring, I guess, because you talk to enterprises, many of them say, well, I'm using the cloud extensively, but I'm not going to put all my data into the cloud. I'm going to do some stuff on-prem. It's going to be hybrid. Are they actually going to build AI factories and retool their data centers for liquid cooling and deal with the energy? How are they going to do that?
I think, so I think the only people that will build AI factories will be enterprises, right? And they will not be something massive. Like I said earlier, there'll be logical units that they will spin up and spin down, right, on demand, right, for a particular problem. I think that's the pedestrian use of AI that we're all waiting for, right? I mean, forget about all the esoteric stuff that people talk about in the context of AI and all these world models and high-flying, silicon technology. That's all cool. But if I'm Jamie Dimon or I'm the CEO of Boeing, I'm telling myself and my people, how do I use these things in a pedestrian manner that gives me something to hang my hat on, right? And these are not going to be some massive pipelines of hardware stitched in software and models and LLM stitched together. They're going to be on-demand things that will get spun up, logical things that get spun up and torn down as needed and solve a specific problem at a given time, right? But you raise a good point. The question is, do all the enterprises have the skill to do that, right? That's going to be an interesting conversation. And I think one of the things that we're not talking about as an industry is the role in the cloud world. We kind of talk about it in the IT world in general, but mostly in the cloud world, the role of in the global system integrator, right? What is going to be the role of an Accenture or Deloitte, right, to help the Jamie Dimons of the world? Maybe Jamie Dimon has PhDs working for him, so he probably doesn't need them.
Yeah,
but the mid-tier guys, right?
Interesting.
To help these enterprises to spin up these AI factories on demand. What are the methods and procedures? What are the best practices? So that they can be replicated on demand and torn down as necessary, right? So that's a whole different conversation I think we ought to have.
Interesting, Sid, because you remember the days of SAP, you'd have to hire a global system integrator to implement it, and then it got too expensive. There was the SAP backlash. System integrators, they're in big trouble. And then what happened? I mean, and the cloud came along, they said the same thing. Now AI comes along, the system integrator, services companies are in big trouble, but it's a complicated matter for a lot of organizations. They've got to figure out their data. They've got to harmonize that data. They've got to figure out how to inject process into that whole equation, build a digital representation of the enterprise. A lot of organizations, to your point, just don't have the skill sets to do that, so they're going to need the GSIs to do that. And I suppose, vendors could have solutions. Right now I can buy a full Nvidia stack if I want, but not everybody wants to do that. So that's why they've introduced capabilities to integrate in. Right, it's a heterogeneous world, as you know. Right?
Yeah, I mean, and then there's the elephant in the room, right? Agentic.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
And everyone's waving their hand and saying, Agentic will do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll do that, but right now it's a lot of smoke and mirrors that people are preaching, So people say, I don't need a GSI, Agentic is going to do that for me. Is that really going to be the case? I mean, I don't think so, GSIs will use Agentic as a tool, but they will still have to build that process, the methodology that is bespoke for that particular environment, right?
I got to make you laugh. So George Gilbert built a graphic for me. I'll show it to you. It's a for those who can't see it, it's a camel, and it's got fleas on the camel's back, and it's surrounded by logos of basically agentic companies with kind of a lightweight interface to a back-end LLM. And there's more of those than there are fleas on a camel's back, and they're probably in big trouble.
Right.
Because their fundamental value proposition is shifting, or it's going to get subsumed by the LLMs, or maybe it's not going to deliver that much value. So, but that's really what's required here. Is you can't just wave a wand and expect Agentic is going to solve all your problems. How do you see these agents? Are they kind of worker bees, right? That are highly governed, but they're not deterministic, right? They are sort of AGI, I mean, or Gen AI. So
Yeah, I think the kind of
is it RPA 2.0 or is it more than that?
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go there.
You hope not, right?
I don't want to go to RPA 2.0, please.
That would really suck.
That scares me.
Maybe
Gonna shut this interview down now. No. I'm thinking of it. You know, these agentic agents or whatever. They're as a helping hand, right? Now, I think there's one step beyond between what people need today and AGI. I don't think we're ever going to see AGI in my lifetime. Yeah. Although people are talking about world model, this, blah, blah, whatever. Let's park that conversation. That's a whole different show. But I do think that agentic is being a little bit overblown in terms of how it's going to be used. I mean, they are going to be used in front office operations, back office operations, and a whole host of other typical, enterprise tasks. But I still think that it's going to be a hybrid where some things will be automated and some things will be working in hand with the humans and as an assistant, right? I think that's what's going to be evolving. And I think that's necessary because that's going to give the buyer and the enterprises or the CIOs the confidence that this is not all smoke and mirrors, right? They want to see it in action. I mean, everybody, I think, wants to see everything in action tomorrow morning, but they're damn scared that something's going to go wrong, right? So I think that's sort of the step in the right direction where you have certain things you use agentic for, certain things you use agentic for assisting humans, and then the role of the GSI who can help stitch all these things together for those who don't have the wherewithal to do it themselves.
Do you worry about jobs? I mean, you know a lot of young people. I do too, and they struggle coming out of college to find jobs. You have a deep technical background. You went to IIT. You got, I think, multiple PhDs. Would you recommend a kid today kind of taking a similar path? Would you recommend him?
Hey, listen. I heard Peter DeSantis and Dave Brown talk about EC2 and solving the jitter problem in virtualization in the Nitro cards, and that was based on a book by John Hennessy and Patterson that I used 30, 40 years ago to write my master's thesis when I wrote code to build a virtual memory for an operating system. Guess what? Some things are timeless, all right?
Yeah. Okay, so computer science is, got a ways to go.
A ways to go.
Exactly. Good. Great to see you, man. Thanks so much for coming in the studio.
Great
really
fun
appreciate it.
Talk to you.
All right, and thank you for watching the AI Factories, NYSE Wired, plus theCUBE. I'm Dave Vellante for John Furrier and the entire CUBE team. Right back right after this short break.